Okay, so imagine this. You're in your study, it's late, and suddenly a man just appears. He's scarred, he looks exhausted, and he tells you he's from the future. Now, this isn't just some creative writing prompt. It's the very premise of a really chilling 2006 essay by the author Dan Simmons. He lays out this fictional encounter that's meant to be a serious, stark warning about where our civilization is headed. And that's how it starts. No flash of light, no big machine, just boom, he's there. And you quickly realize this guy is not here to give you winning lottery numbers. He's a veteran of a future war, a terrible one, and he has a message that he absolutely has to get back to our time. So that's the big question, right? What could possibly be so important that it would make someone break the laws of physics just to deliver a message? Well, what he has to say isn't about flying cars or alien invasions. It's about a huge mistake he believes we are making right now. So the first part of his warning is, well, it's almost philosophical. He basically argues that the entire way we're thinking about the war on terrorism is completely and fundamentally wrong. To explain what he means, he uses this absolutely brilliant analogy. He says, imagine it's 1941, right after Pearl Harbor. And what if FDR had gone on the radio and declared war, not on the Empire of Japan, but on aviation? I mean, it sounds completely absurd, doesn't it? You don't go to war with a tactic or a technology. You go to war with the people and the ideology that are using it against you. And there's actually a formal name for this kind of mistake. He calls it a category error. It's a real term from philosophy, and it basically means you've defined your problem so badly, you've put it in the wrong box entirely, that you make it impossible to ever solve. You're just not aiming at the real target. And here is his gut punch of a thesis. The Traveler says that the West is fighting terrorism, which is just like fighting aviation. He argues the real enemy, the actual conflict, is a much bigger 100-year ideological war, which he explicitly calls the century war with Islam. And failing to see that, he says, is our fatal category error. Now, to really drive this point home, the Traveler doesn't just use warnings from his own time. He reaches way, way back into the past. He pulls out a lesson from ancient Greece, from a military disaster that he thinks has everything to do with our situation today. He brings up the Peloponnesian War. You've got Athens and Sparta beating each other up for years. Then Athens, the great democracy, gets this grand idea to expand the war by sailing a massive fleet to attack Syracuse. But the whole thing was a complete unmitigated catastrophe. Their army and navy were wiped out, and it was the beginning of the end for Athens, its empire, and its democracy. And to show the mindset in Athens at the time, he quotes the historian Thucydides, who basically said the Athenians had become so successful for so long, they started to believe their own hype. They thought they could do anything, and they literally couldn't tell the difference between their own wishful thinking and what was actually possible. They were drunk on success. But here is the massive twist in the Traveler's argument. The lesson he takes from this is not the obvious one, don't get overconfident. No. He argues that Athens failed because its democratic values, its decency, its hesitation, made it too soft. It wasn't willing to be as absolutely ruthless as its enemies were. And that idea that a democracy can be too decent to survive, that leads us directly into the most prophetic and honestly, the most disturbing part of his entire message. He starts to describe the future that awaits a West that he believes is making that exact same mistake. He looks the author dead in the eye and gives them this incredibly shocking and personal prophecy. He says the author's own grandchildren will one day live in a state of subjugation, a state he calls demititude. This is where the warning stops being abstract and gets terrifyingly real. So what is dimitude? Well, according to how the Traveler explains it in the essay, it's a specific legal status for non-Muslims living under Islamic Sharia law. It's a whole system of laws and rules that makes them second-class citizens. And the legal system that enforces the state of dimitude, he says, is Sharia law. He prophesies that Sharia will completely replace secular law across Europe. In a future continent he refers to, chillingly, as Eurabia. And he even gets into the nitty-gritty details. He mentions things like the jizya. He explains that this is a special tax that non-Muslims, the dummies, will have to pay, basically just for the privilege of being allowed to live as non-believers under the system. From here, the prophecy just accelerates. It moves from these broad predictions about society to a terrifying rapid-fire list of specific events, and it all builds to a final unspoken mystery.
he just starts rattling off these iconic landmarks: the Golden Gate Bridge, the Space Needle, St. Paul's in London. He claims all of them, all these huge symbols of Western culture, are going to be attacked and destroyed in the coming years. It's just one horror after another. And then, just when you think it can't get any worse, he makes it personal again. He tells the author that his 2 grandsons, by name, will be publicly executed under Sharia law. Their crime: dating Muslim women. And the reason they're targeted, he says, is because of the very words the author is about to write down. With that devastating personal threat just hanging in the air, the traveler gives him one last piece of advice. And then, just as suddenly as he arrived, he's gone, leaving the author and us just reeling. But there's one last thing. The traveler apparently says 3 final words before he vanishes, and the author says he won't repeat them because they shook him more than anything else he heard that night. And so that leaves us with the ultimate question. What was this essay really about? Is it a warning, a political argument, or just a brilliantly constructed story designed to make us think? The author leaves those final 3 words and the ultimate meaning up to us.